is in crisis. And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
สวัสดีค่ะ Very good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight. I am Natha Gomonwadin.
And good evening, I'm Thep Chayong. We begin tonight with good news for the tourism industry of this country, right?
Yes.
Because if things go according to the plans of the tourism ministry, in early October, Thailand will welcome the first group of foreign tourists in more than half a year.
Yeah, it's been quite a long time.
That's
and
right.
as far as we know, Thailand has relied so much on tourism industry. So it's quite good news for people who work in this sector.
Certainly. A charter flight carrying 150 Chinese tourists will touch down in Phuket on October the 8th in what the ministry hopes will be the beginning of a revival of the tourism business, which has been hot hit by the coronavirus pandemic. The Chinese tourists will be from Guangzhou, a Chinese port city northwest of Hong Kong on the Pearl River. The Chinese city has seen 0 new infection cases for a considerable period of time. The tourists will be here under the so-called special tourist visa program adopted by the ministry to attract a return of foreign tourists. They will initially be given a 90-day visa, which can be extended twice, 90 days for each of the extensions. In total, tourists who are here under the program will be able to stay as long as 270 days. The tourists will be subject to the mandatory alternative state quarantine for 14 days before they will be allowed to venture out of their accommodations. Each of the tourists is also required to have a COVID-19 free certificate and health insurance policy.
Tourism Minister Phiphat Ratchakit Prakan said this morning that on the same day, another 7 Chinese businessmen will fly in on their private jet at Suvarnabhumi International Airport. Thailand has imposed a ban on foreign tourists since early April following an outbreak of the coronavirus. It has gradually eased the lockdown and is now set to reopen for tourism under strict health control. Phuket has been one of the favored destinations for Chinese tourists. Thailand last year welcomed close to 40 million tourists, with Chinese accounting for 1/4 of them. Phiphat said that on October 25th, another group of 125 Chinese tourists, also from Guangzhou, will arrive at Suvarnabhumi Airport. They will be followed by 120 tourists from Europe who will arrive on November the 1st.
So this good news on Thailand's side, but on the side of our western neighbor, Myanmar, not so good news.
Yeah.
Because the coronavirus continues to wreak havoc in the country. And of course, Thai authorities are quite afraid that there would be a spillover of the virus over the border. So the Thai government is offering assistance in whatever way it can to help the Myanmar authorities handle the pandemic. And a senior official of the health ministry told Thai PBS yesterday that the most effective way to deal with the pandemic, especially that in Myanmar, is to tackle the virus at its source. Myanmar has been hit by a second wave of COVID-19, which sees Yangon, the country's biggest city and the former capital, placed under lockdown. As of today, the country has registered more than 11,000 cases of coronavirus and a death toll of over 250. The 10 Thai provinces bordering Myanmar have been put on high alert. Police and soldiers have been conducting patrol to prevent illegal immigrants from crossing the border into the country. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Don Pramath said yesterday he was going to meet his Myanmar counterpart to discuss how Thailand can help to curb the pandemic raging in the country. He said assistance will include supplies of medicines and protective equipment. How Thailand should deal with the potential of the pandemic spreading across the border into Thailand was one of the topics discussed during the meeting of the Center for COVID Situation Administration yesterday.
Speaking after the meeting, the foreign minister said Thailand could share its experience in dealing with the pandemic with Myanmar. Meanwhile, Dr. Thanarak Phalitpat, Deputy Director General, Disease Control Department, told Thai PBS World last night that Thai health authorities have been discussing ways to help Myanmar deal with the situation. He said Thai health authorities are ready to share their experience in combating the pandemic in Myanmar. The best way to fight the pandemic is to do it at its source, Dr. Thanarak said. He said it would be more effective to fight the virus inside Myanmar than only trying to stop it from spilling over into Thailand. However, Dr. Thanarak also appealed to the Thai private sector to cooperate with authorities in not hiring illegal immigrants. Thailand has been home to millions of migrant workers from Myanmar, many of whom have entered the country illegally. Thai authorities are particularly concerned with Myanmar migrant workers who still continue to sneak into the country without being subject to health checks.
And looking at the rest of the world, things seem to be not very positive, right? Because we still see a rising number of new infection cases. And if you talk about Myanmar in particular, it's quite clear that Myanmar is still one of the countries in the world that has continued to see a surge in the number of new infections. But Myanmar also, as we all know, that they have an election coming up soon. But despite the resurgence of the pandemic, the Union Election Commission of Myanmar shows no sign that it will postpone the election scheduled for November the 8th. Several political parties have asked the Commission to consider postponing the election to avoid further aggravating the pandemic. The Irrawaddy News website of Myanmar today quoted an official at the Myanmar's Ministry of Health and Sports as warning that political campaigning is putting more lives at risk. And she said all gatherings, including those ahead of the general election, should be avoided to be avoided so that the virus would not spread further. The National League for Democracy, or NLD, has faced criticisms after hundreds of its supporters gathered in Mandalay, one of the biggest cities in Myanmar, in apparent breach of the COVID-19 guidelines. That means that most people there did not wear masks and did not keep social distancing. Yeah. So that's the latest situation in Myanmar. But as I said earlier, that Myanmar is just one of the many countries in the world that continue to see a surge in the number of infection cases and deaths.
Yeah, it's not quite uplifting because Myanmar is neighboring country to Thailand. Yeah. But when we take a look all over the world right now, the number of total cases of infection of COVID-19 is more than 33 million. And according to Dr. Thanarak, in fact, it could be rising up to 100 million if we can count formally. And the number of deaths is more than 1 million. So what's the hope of having vaccine at the global level right now? We have Kun Nat Bunnak for more detail of this story. So what's the latest situation of COVID-19 overall in the global scale?
It's not something we really want to hear because the COVID-19 death toll has already surpassed the 1 million mark. And even worse, many regions around the world are seeing big increases of new infections. Even the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said it's a mind-numbing figure and an agonizing milestone regarding the 1 million mark of the death tolls. And so far, the pandemic has spread to 188 countries around the world with more than 33 million confirmed cases. And as for the latest figures, we can see that the United States is still at the top with around 7 million confirmed cases and around 200,000 deaths. Other than that is India, Brazil, Russia, Colombia, Peru, Spain, Mexico, Argentina, and South Africa. And you can see that these are the countries that are experiencing big increases of confirmed cases, especially in India. It has seen the biggest increase around the world as of today because India has found around 70,000 new cases today, and the US has found 33,000 new cases as of today as well. So very not so uplifting news to hear about regarding COVID-19. And what is even worse is that the real figures might have been a lot higher than what you're seeing right now, according to the World Health Organization.
Yes, and according to Dr. Thanarak Phuliphat, who gave exclusive interview with us last night, he said actually the number could be as high as 100 million if they can really check individual person.
Right.
So what would be the response so far by WHO?
The executive director of the WHO's Health Emergencies Program said yesterday that the current numbers of the infections and deaths around the world are likely to have been underestimated. And recently, the WHO said that there will be up to 120 million rapid diagnostic tests for COVID-19, which will be made available to low and middle income countries at a maximum of $5 per unit over the 6 months period starting from next month, which is October. This is actually an agreement between the WHO as well as partners, and they claim that the rapid tests provide very reliable results in approximately very short time, from 15 to 30 minutes, rather than hours or days. And what is even more special is that these tests are available at a very lower price and with less sophisticated equipment. So what the WHO has been doing is that they are going to provide these rapid tests for low and middle income countries that we may have seen that they are struggling with the testing at the moment.
Yeah, and it seems the whole world is waiting anxiously for vaccine.
That's right.
So what's the latest development?
So far, there are around 240 potential vaccines in early development, with 40 in clinical trials and 9 candidate vaccines in the final stage of testing as well. But on the other side of it, the WHO has said that it does not expect to see widespread vaccinations against COVID-19 until next year, around middle of 2021. But we can see that many countries around the world have been working really hard and speeding up their vaccine development, notably in Russia with the Sputnik 5 vaccine, as well as in the UK and in China, that we've seen that they are speeding up with their vaccine development here. Even in Thailand, there are already a few candidate vaccines that are already in the testing stage. For example, a couple of weeks ago, Chulalongkorn University revealed that their vaccine has been tested on animals and the results turned out very well. And last week, during the UN General Assembly, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha has already urged the United Nations to play a leading role in ensuring that all countries get equal access to the vaccines when they become available. And he also said that all countries must have belief in multilateral cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. So the vaccine development is actually the biggest hope for everyone else in the world.
Another positive development is that as many as 170 countries plus are working with the World Health Organization to develop and to distribute vaccines that they are being jointly developed to make sure that eventually this vaccine will be made available as a global common good to people who need it the most. So that is a very positive development. But we still don't know yet when the first vaccine will be made available.
Despite that, Russia has claimed that they had this vaccine registered as well. And there are other sides of it. If many countries have been worrying that if we really speed up the vaccine development, the downside of it is whether it's really going to work for certain groups, because it requires a lot of research and testing before it gets commercially tested as well.
Yeah, so it may take time a bit just to make sure that it's really function in killing COVID-19.
Yes.
Still a big challenge. And what about development in other stories around the world?
And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following.
Thailand recorded 14 new cases of COVID-19 today. Half of them are Thai soldiers returning from South Sudan, while others came back from Turkey, Hong Kong, and India. The new cases raised the total number of infections to 3,559, with one new recovery and no new fatalities. The government has extended the visa amnesty for foreigners stranded in Thailand to October 31st after it expired last week. The announcement comes after immigration offices in Bangkok and Pattaya were reportedly overwhelmed with people trying to extend their visas last Friday. Last week, the immigration office said that 150,000 foreigners were staying in Thailand under the visa amnesty. Stranded foreigners who wish to stay in Thailand after October 31st must submit their application to an immigration office by October 3rd. The Hazardous Substances Committee has reconfirmed its ban on the production, import, export, and possession of the herbicide paraquat and pesticide chlorpyrifos, which came into effect on June 1st. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of the Ministry of Agriculture admitted that they're still unable to find affordable alternative substances. Despite the ban, many farmers still use paraquat because it is cheap and an affordable alternative is not yet available. A kindergarten teacher has been fired from a large private school in Nonthaburi for assaulting her students, in which the CCTV footage sparked outrage on social media. The teacher faces 2 charges: physical assault and violation of the Child Protection Act. Police said further investigation is required to see if she violated the Government Teacher and Education Personnel Act. These charges were filed separately from the 8 accusations backed by evidence submitted by parents because police consider them to be different cases.
And regarding this issue with the kindergarten kids here, there's this belief in Thailand where like adults believe that punishing their children will help them learn, but we have seen cases that adults have gone way too far and become so violent with them. And this actually helps with the development of children and their growth, and whether it's their self-esteem and all these things. And personally, I believe that I don't think that punishing children with violence is actually going to help them learn in the long run. But I'm not sure for both of you, what do you think about this issue?
The Prime Minister, Kun Prayut, today addressed this particular issue. He was asked about the incident that we just reported. And he said, well, he's not happy that this kind of things happen. And he said he has instructed authorities concerned to make sure that this kind of punishment, excessive punishment, will not be repeated. But who knows, as you mentioned, that has become sort of a belief or a practice, traditional practice among Thai who still look at the so-called corporal punishments as something as an instrument to the discipline young kids.
Yeah, and some people still believe that punishing children is right for them because they have the right to tell them, to teach them what is right or wrong, but the adults seems to take it too far and started using violence or like things, basic things like hitting their children, spanking their children. That is, some people may not know is that these things already sort of ignited some sort of
Yeah.
violence, and it's just like you're telling them that violence is okay. If parents punish their children with violence, that is okay. But in the global perspective, if we look at Western countries, we don't really do that. But
the sad thing is that the case we are reporting is not isolated case, because at this very same school, I mean, when parents take a look at all the video clips, videotape of the school classrooms,
The CCTV
yeah,
footage,
CCTV,
right?
and they come across a lot of scenes in which the teachers were seen as treating their children very violently, though not hitting them as such, but the way that they treated the children were quite unacceptable to the parents.
And the thing is that if we use a lot of violence with these children will remember for the rest of their lives, is because it's not just physical abuse, but it's also emotional abuse. And that sort of abuse will stay with them like forever. So many of these sectors have been telling them that this is not the right thing to do.
Yeah. The worrying case is this is not an isolated case, as Khun Thepchai mentioned, because it may appear that other schools have followed the same practice of punishing the student beyond the limitation, and that is inappropriate for treating kindergarten kids.
And this has been big news in the Thai media for the past 1 week.
Yeah.
And a lot of authorities have been pressured to take action.
Yeah. And talking about COVID-19, it's affecting the whole economy, especially for the newly graduated students from university. They are having hard time to find the jobs. But over the weekend, the government has an exhibition of job expo, and having corporate sector, like hundreds of them, having job application to fill in more than 1 million job position. And Khun Kitipat Chun Sukjit, our correspondent of Thai PBS World, visited this job expo.
Tens of thousands of Thai flocked to a job expo hunting for work last weekend, as the government offered more than 1 million positions in an attempt to tackle mounting unemployment in an economy battered by the coronavirus pandemic. The Thai government predicts that the economy could shrink by a record 8.5% this year, with its vital tourism industry taking a massive beating, and the Federation of Thai Industries estimating job losses at a record 2.5 to 3 million this year, with more than 1 million in the tourist sector alone. Thailand has a total workforce of about 38 million. More than 570 booths from public organizations, private firms, and for roles overseas were set up for job seekers at Jobs Expo Thailand 2020 in Bangkok, which runs until Monday. Some of Thailand's largest firms were among those offering work, including agribusiness giant Jaranpokapan Foods, telecoms firm True Corp, and energy group PTT, which is majority owned by the government. About 1.24 million jobs will be offered at government agencies, private firms, and overseas. The government will help the private sector pay half of the salaries when hiring 260,000 new graduates for a year under a co-payment scheme. Tira Makaampai, who is 50 years old and unemployed, said he thinks this many people attending reflects a lot of unemployment, even older people like him. It shows that elders have to compete with first job applicants. He believes it's about a 50-50 split between those who have been laid off and first jobbers who are attending the expo. In the meantime, Nopawan Chanpratat, a company recruiter, said the age range of people who are applying is quite varied. There are students who just graduated and people who are older and still looking for jobs. Besides the general jobs being offered at the exhibition, there's a company, Better EV, offering a taxi driver jobs for women called Lady Taxi, which is a business launched at the beginning of the pandemic. Saranpong Dangdej, CEO of Better EV, said it's both a challenge and opportunity to start the business during the pandemic.
So I think during the pandemic, both a challenge and an opportunity. When you're building a business, when you're building a product from the ground, from zero, when everyone is at zero, going up and running from zero, it's also it's a blessing and a curse, really, right? Right now it's harder to raise funds, but it's also easier to find opportunities because everyone is looking for opportunities.
People are the most important part of the country and for moving it forward. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha said as he opened the event. The Job Expo is part of relief measures as the government has introduced a 1.9 trillion baht package to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, particularly on the all-important tourist sector. The government predicts just 6.7 million foreigners will visit Thailand this year after last year's record 39.8 million, whose spending made up about 11.4% of the country's GDP.
So that's part of relief measure by the government to try to find job for young graduate people who are facing difficulty because of COVID-19. And when talking about COVID-19, right now Myanmar is also facing crisis of sharp rise cases of COVID-19. What's the situation over there, especially for Thai people who have to adjust their pace of life? Right now we have Kun Onrawi Tangmisang, PR Manager of Index Creative Village, Myanmar. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. I call you Natty then. Natty is easier.
Yes, Natty,
right?
you can call me Natty.
All right, Natty, you were one of the early birds who went into Myanmar after the country opened up, right?
Right.
And to do business on public relations and to organize events there. So
Right, correct.
I suppose that without the pandemic, you would be back in Yangon by now.
Definitely,
Right? That's right.
definitely.
So did you choose not to go back at this moment, or were you not welcome there because of the restrictions on travel?
Okay, I have to be perfectly honest. I left the country when the first case arrived. I mean, when the first case was reported. So I left the country, and then because of many people's concerns about my safety and my health, so the company decided to allow us to go back. And then actually, if you see right, Myanmar, there are two phases of first wave and second wave, as we called. So when the first wave kind of died down a little bit, the situation improves. So I was trying to go back in, but then actually I applied for follow the process and procedures through the Thai Business Association and then with the Thai embassy. But then the second wave hit Myanmar pretty hard, as we know now. That's why I cannot go back, and I'm pretty much stuck here in Bangkok.
But how is your business back in Yangon?
Actually, because currently I'm doing PR and communications. It's an agency, a Thai agency, Index Creative Village. It's actually a Thai company, but we have an office in Myanmar, and I'm taking care of the communications department in Myanmar. Because of we're doing PR and communications and digital, so the business operate as usual. So our clients are still operating their business. We're taking care of their public relations, and some of the clients we take care of their digital part. Digital thing is is still ongoing. So pretty much I have to manage my team, my local team from Bangkok. Yes, and my whole team is full of local young talents. So managing them from Bangkok is quite challenging, but also fun at the same time.
Yeah, so it's been many months already that you have to command from Bangkok.
Yes.
And how's life over there from your staff? What they tell you?
Okay, so I communicate with them on a daily basis. So I pretty much follow up with the situation quite closely regarding the business as well, and to inform my clients. The situation right now in Myanmar, especially in Yangon, where I was based, is they're under what we call lockdown, but then in Myanmar terms, it's stay-at-home measures. But this is the second phase of stay-at-home measures. What does it mean by the second phase of the stay-at-home measures? So when the second wave hit, it was the first phase of stay-at-home, meaning that people allowed to go to work, but only they allow 2 people to go to the shopping center to buy grocery shopping, and then 3 people to go to the hospitals, but they could still go to work. But then the situation got worse and worse, I would say. So they announced, I would say on I would say Sunday night of 20th of September, they announced that they would implement the second phase of stay-at-home measures, which means people are not allowed to go to work anymore. They have to implement the work from home strategy. So I would say most of the business have stopped in Myanmar right now.
But how strictly is the measure enforced, as far as you know?
It's become stricter and stricter every day, because right now, right, not just only working from home, but right now there are checkpoints around Yangon to, I would say, to restrict people from going from one township to another township. So if you are a business operator and you would like to operate your business, or meaning like going from one township to another township, you have to register on the website, and then you will get the QR code, and you need to share the QR code with the police at the checkpoint. So it becomes more restricted in Yangon now.
Yeah, and on a daily basis, can people go to restaurants, department stores, public places? Not at all.
Cannot. Supermarkets are still open, but then with the measures with the restriction of not going from township to township, it becomes like quite difficult for people to shop from another like township. Because some people, they live from different township with the grocery stores or supermarkets or even department store, and also the department stores. The supermarket part still open, but then the closing hours has become 7 p.m. from 9 p.m. Usually it was 9 p.m. Now it becomes 7 p.m. So people still allowed to go for grocery shopping. That's pretty much.
So what did your staff in Yangon tell you about how people in the city are adapting to these new lockdown measures?
The food delivery is actually quite booming these days, and they allow food delivery to operate the business. So people have been, my staff and then my friends, they have been heavily relied on I would say, several of food delivery companies. So they have been like staying at home, working from home. That's pretty much the life in Yangon at the moment.
And do people have to wear masks when going outside?
Yes, they do. It's very a strict measure for people to wear masks whenever they leave the house. If you don't wear masks, you could get in trouble for that. And they actually even launch some songs to encourage, like previously before the second phase of stay-at-home measures, they launched some songs to encourage people to wear masks, to wash their hands. So they encourage people to keep social distance as well. So for this measure, they have been many, not only the government but also the corporates have been putting out these messages to encourage people to stay safe.
Yeah. But I believe the daily life of people must have been disrupted, especially
Definitely.
business.
Yes.
So how's the economy going?
I would say right now, the business have been disrupted and they have to put to stop. But everyone is, I would say, has high hope that within this, I would say 2 weeks, because this work from home periods is from 21st of September to 7th of October. So within this period, a lot of people hope that the situation will improve, and then they could continue their life working after this period of time.
Do you sense, or did your staff sense any signs of resentment among the public members who may see the way that government has been handling the situation as a failure because of the sudden resurgence of the pandemic, right? To the point that it may affect the popularity of the parties in power in this coming election, right?
Okay, so I would say from my staff or from my friends in Myanmar, they have not really expressed any resentment, because I am sure that they understand how hard the government is trying and how hard the doctors, the frontliners are doing their very best with their capacity, with their heart to fight with this pandemic. But I have seen very positive energy from Myanmar people because we understand a lot of people think that Myanmar has very limited capacity and resources in terms of hospitals, in terms of food, in terms of doctors. But now what I see is that many parties, meaning that the corporate world, the people, they donate food, they donate mattress, they donate a lot of donations coming in from everywhere, like within the country and from other countries as well. We have seen a lot of donations coming to help Myanmar. So this is a positive energy that I think like we need to highlight more on this.
And we know that election is coming on the 8th of November.
Yes.
So what's the election campaign of each party, especially from Aung San Suu Kyi?
Okay, so the strategy, because due to the situation right now, the strategy has been shifted to Facebook. Because Facebook is basically the Google of Myanmar. Which means like Thai people, when we want to search for something, we search on Google. Yeah. But in Myanmar, if they want to search for something, they search on Facebook. So basically, Facebook becomes the life of the people, become the main and the main tool of communications with the general public in Myanmar. So a lot of big parties have shifted their strategy to focus on Facebook. But then we still see the on-ground activity as well. For example, the trucks running around with decorated with the flags, and then we have seen what we call saika, which is like in Thai we call sam law, like wearing NLD T-shirts, like going around because like people now transported using the transportation by like sam law in many roads of Yangon. So we have seen that. But then outside of Yangon, where there are less cases, we have still seen a lot of I would say campaigns. You still see a majority of people gathering, rallying support for their favorite parties. In Naypyidaw, we see a lot of course, the USDP supporters. In other cities, we see a lot of NLD supporters rallying as well, where there are lesser cases in those particular cities.
So what is your reading now with the election? The NLD will remain as popular as it was in the last election, or the USDP will emerge as a potential challenger?
Okay, because I'm an outsider, so I will comment as an outsider.
That's right,
yeah, I was comment as a...
You have to be careful, otherwise you won't be allowed back into Myanmar.
That I'm very scared. So basically, from my point of view, of course, I see a lot of I would say supports for the NLD for this election continue. The support is still there. From what I noticed personally is that like the first day the NLD announced to launch the election campaign, I think not all, it would be bad to say all, but majority of my friends, they have changed their Facebook profile. They added the frame to show that they support the NLD. A lot of them have done that to show support. So I would say that, you know, the NLD is still, their support is still going strong. But then we have seen a lot of, I would say not a lot, but then some of the parties emerging as well. For example, the PPP, which is the leader of that party, which is the blue party, what we call, she is the lady as well. So people have been talking about this, like whether this lady will replace the lady or not, or this lady will, I would say, challenge that the current lady or not. So, well, there have been talks going on around this as well. But in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I would say like NLD will still be going very strong.
You know, outside Myanmar, of course, we have heard a lot of criticisms against Aung San Suu Kyi because of a human rights record. Right? But inside Myanmar, how is she being seen now? Is she still the figure that people still respect and will support in the coming election?
Yes, I would say that Aung San Suu Kyi, she is seen as, of course, the mother of the country, as the Myanmar people call Amesu. So she is still seen as the figure and someone who would lead the country, someone who stands for hopes for the country, and she is still, as a lot of people still rally support for her.
And I believe that most of your friends are urban middle class in Yangon, and they still support Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yes. They still support Aung San Suu Kyi very strongly.
You have been in Myanmar quite a few years now, right? How many years have you been
Actually,
there?
I've been living there for about like 6 years, but then when I was at another company, another media company.
So you were there,
I was
you arrived there right at the beginning of the transformation.
Yes, around 2000, like 8 years ago, I would say.
So back then, when the country was opening up, people saw Myanmar as a new gold mine, right? So was it a gold mine or for you back then?
Well, no.
It still is.
Oh, it is still fascinating, I would say. The country, I would say I still love the country, as in like I cherish the culture and the way of people, the kindness of the people. And of course, I still see opportunities in Myanmar. And because there are a lot of things that we can do to help the country. Yes, to move forward to a better and a bright future.
Yeah. And what do you miss the most about Myanmar?
Myanmar food. Myanmar food, and of course Myanmar people. It's very difficult to find Myanmar food, good Myanmar food here. So yes, I do miss the Myanmar food, and then I do miss, of course, the kindness of the people of Myanmar. I miss seeing people still rely on the traditions of wearing long ji, going to the temples, praying. So I still miss seeing that, because we don't really see that anymore in Thailand, right? People wearing Thai traditional dress, going out. It's quite hard to see. So Myanmar has this something, the charm that keeps getting me going back in, keep going back in.
Yeah.
And so what are the biggest changes in Myanmar that you have seen over the past 6 years?
I would say the transformation. I would say what I see is that the country has developed so fast that I would say some people may not develop. Like some areas may not be developed as fast as other areas, and like some people are still not included. The inclusivity that is the key here. That people, in terms of national development, the inclusiveness is something that we need to focus on. That people will have to enjoy, the transformation of the country to a better and a bright future, and everyone will be benefiting from this transformation, from this change of the country.
Yeah, quite crucial moment, the transition moment of
Yes,
Myanmar,
yes,
and you are
yes.
part of it.
Yeah, this was the reason why I decided to move to Myanmar, because I want to witness this with my own eyes. How from back then when I first arrived in Myanmar, the SIM card cost me 3,000 baht, and now it's cost me even like 30 baht. So from this, I was fortunate to witness this change, and also with the coming in of the 4G now. So the people's lives have been changed in so many ways.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
for
It's a pleasure.
enlightening us about what's really going on in Myanmar, especially COVID-19, and then the country is in transformation. Thank you.
We wish you all the best and hope you can make it back to Yangon soon.
Soon,
Yeah.
yes, very soon, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Okay.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณค่ะ So that's the view from คุณออนระวี or คุณ Natty ตั้งมีแสง who's been working in Myanmar for more than 6 years, and she will stay with us and stay updated with her in Thai edition with Tan Lok with Thai PBS World. We'll be back at about 8 o'clock. But for now, thank you very much for watching.
Thank you for watching.